Species. Unite.
That is no life for these birds. And it is definitely not what the consumer is thinking or assuming when they see these nice labels and they, oh, I'm paying so much more for this. That change must be going for the animals, right? No, it's lining pockets and it's keeping that status quo of that factory farm going.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Novogratz. This is Species Unite. Most of us want to make choices that are kinder to animals, to the planet, and to ourselves. But in today's food system, kindness is often buried under labels like cage-free, humane certified, or even climate-friendly beef. These terms are designed to make us feel good, but as PETA's Amber Canavan reveals, they hide the same suffering and environmental destruction. For more than a decade, Amber has led campaigns that expose humane washing and pushed companies from Starbucks to Whole Foods to do better. This conversation is about pulling back the curtain on the myths we've been sold and about the power that each of us has to choose differently. One of the simplest, most impactful ways to take action is with what's on our plate. That is why this October we are inviting you to join the Species Unite Plant-Powered Challenge, a 30-day adventure to try delicious, cruelty-free food, reduce your climate footprint, and stand with the animals. Because real change doesn't come from labels. It comes from us. Hi, Amber. Welcome. It's really nice to meet you.
You as well. Thanks for having me.
Why don't you just give a little background on who you are, what you do, and how you got here?
I am PETA's Vegan Campaigns Project Manager. So everything to do with how farmed animals are treated for food, and that includes everything from meat, dairy, eggs, down to honey, as well as how animals are used for both food and maybe their skins, like leather or feathers and down. And then, of course, vegan food. It really covers a bit of everything.
Nice. And you've been there for a while, right?
I've been at PETA for about 10 years now, but I've been an activist since I was 14.
How'd that start?
You know what? It was PETA. My school got the internet, not cafe, but we got the internet at my school. And PETA was one of the pioneers of like using the internet to really reach out to people, especially like young people who were interested to learn more. And that really started me on that path.
We just made a short film and Lisa Jones-Engel from PETA is in it. It's about testing, but it's mostly about this community in Georgia. And Lisa coming in and helping them fight this monkey farm. And the reason I bring it up is a lot of the response I've received so far on these edits is like they had no idea PETA did all these things, like science and lawyers, all the behind the scenes stuff about PETA. A lot of mainstream doesn't know what a powerhouse, massive operation is going on. PETA's everywhere. But so many people still think of kind of like, oh, PETA throwing blood.
Anytime you see a big flashy, thing, a protest or anything like that, well, before it got to that point, there was a whole lot of what I do, which is a lot of the behind the scenes emails and coordinating. The best campaign you can ever win is when you never even have to start. Sometimes that email from PETA or a call from PETA can really do that trick because they don't want the mess of people, coming out for a protest or getting a bunch of phone calls because they're going to build a monkey prison in somebody's backyard.
How do you decide on a campaign and how far do some go? And can you predict like what's going to take, emails and what's going to take a huge protest or more?
I still get surprised every day. We won our campaign to get Starbucks to stop upcharging for vegan milks. It was an accessibility and affordability and sustainability campaign all rolled into one. And that took several years. Some days it did feel a little bit hopeless, but we just kept hammering at them because it really was the right thing to do. It was a good business decision for them to do. It's more sustainable. Cow's milk takes so much more water and has a larger climate footprint than vegan milks. And, then suddenly they got a new CEO and he just made the switch. And like dominoes right after that, Pete's Coffee and a bunch of other of their competitors in the like large coffee chain field on down to individual coffee chains, we're like, well, okay, Starbucks did it. Now we're going to look like we're lagging behind if we don't. That was several years coming, but it really did make a big impact because people choosing that vegan milk option and not being penalized, sometimes 80 or 90 cents per drink. That makes it more affordable and more of a reasonable option for people who want to just have some vegan milk in their coffee. Why would that be so hard?
That went on for a long, long time, right?
Yeah.
What was the resistance behind it?
I think they went through about 3 CEOs over that course of time. Starbucks was doing some funny things over the years. The new CEO, he had come from a background with Chipotle, and Chipotle had those awesome tofu with sofritas vegan options. At an earlier time when a lot of places didn't have a vegan entree, we had some hope, and it did pay off.
Congratulations on that one, because I honestly thought it was never going to happen because it took so long.
It can pay off because they're going to attract new customers who, you go to the one coffee shop.
How do you decide what to campaign for, what to go after?
Sometimes it's just finding the right moment for things or just, identifying new problems. One of the big, new problems, this has been brewing for a number of years. It's kind of a result of our success is this rise in humane washing. It's been going on for, several decades, probably even since the beginning of, us starting to mass raise and slaughter animals. But, these companies know that there's increased awareness by the public about cruelty to animals involved in our food systems. They know the public cares about the issue. And instead of, transitioning to producing vegan foods, which some of them are, even Oscar Mayer has vegan hot dogs now. And, we're still pushing for them to make that a bigger part of their business and, transition away. You can make a vegan hot dog now. It's delicious. But what they've also been doing is what we call humane washing. And this is a term that is similar to greenwashing, which were coined to highlight how instead of fixing or stop doing that harmful thing to the environment or animals, we just find a better way to market it and cover up the bad stuff and make the consumers feel better about it rather than actually, addressing the root of the issue. Whole Foods has been a biggie that we've, gone after on many occasions for some pretty egregious myths and outright lies that, these animals were treated in some way humanely. You see labels like certified humane, global animal partnership, free range, cage free, grass fed, even organic carries a bit of a, this halo that makes you think the animals are outside in fields when they're not. All of these things are, keeping people who probably would go vegan. It's kind of just giving them that one little out, that one little thing to be like, oh, but that vegan food looks pretty good, but that label also looks really nice. I think those animals are on grass outside. And multiple PETA investigations have, found the complete opposite. These animals are still in factory farms.
I think it's a reason so many people say, oh, I don't eat factory farm meat, where like 97% of meat is from factory farms. So they're not the 3%, but they really truly think they don't because of these labels, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So give some examples of some of what's happening at Whole Foods.
One of our investigations was Plainville Turkey. That was a global animal partnership certified company. So, they had imagery of that would be put in a consumer's mind that these turkeys were living some semblance of a natural life. Obviously, they end up dead, wrapped in plastic in the grocery store shelves, but PETA did an investigation. And during the catching phase, so this is like after the turkeys have reached their what they call slaughter weight, they need to be caught and put onto these crowded transport trucks in these tiny crates where they can't even stand up in for a sometimes very long, grueling ride on this slaughter transport truck to the slaughterhouse where, they're hung up by their legs and have their throats slit. During this catching process, these workers were documented for, just straight up sexually abusing these turkeys, mimicking sex acts on them. They were throwing them around like soccer balls. They were hitting them with blunt objects, making fun of them, just mocking them, which is, horrifyingly common in our investigations. And this investigation, it took several years for all this stuff to move through the courts, but it resulted in the most cruelty charges of any farmed animal investigation in history. You would think that would be one of the larger, more shadowy factory farming companies that would have this. But no, this was a, animal welfare certified label was being slapped on these turkeys' bodies at, fancy high-end stores. And people were paying a premium for them, which is, what we've been seeing, time after time when we have investigated or had whistleblowers come forward from these companies that are selling products with these misleading labeling, that you actually pull back the curtain and look at the actual conditions. Maybe they're not doing one thing. Maybe they're not putting the chickens used for eggs in battery cages, but they're still in the giant factory farm where there's 20,000 birds in one shed and they are never let outside like our cage-free investigations. That is no life for these birds. And it is definitely not what the consumer is thinking or assuming when they see these nice labels and they, oh, I'm paying so much more for this. That change must be going for the animals, right? No, it's lining pockets and it's keeping that status quo of that factory farm going.
Who's in charge of the labels? Who says this is a humane meat? Who gets to say it, and what do people have to do to achieve it? Because it sounds like it happens a lot.
There are a lot of labels out there with different qualifications, different levels of things. For example, one of the ones that claims to be the highest, which was associated with Plainville, the Global Animal Partnership, it's called Animal Welfare Certified with their label. They have 5 different steps, and each one's supposed to be better than the other. That was founded by Whole Foods originally. And then they have a board of directors that is made up of some different industry representatives and a couple of animal welfare organizations, which we have actually, done some work on trying to urge them to get off the board. Investigation after investigation, we're like, what is your presence, doing here other than giving this label, this very undue legitimacy? And it seems a little off that they're still putting their name to this label when we found such egregious cruelty going on. It just ends up being, again, like I said, misleading. It's misleading consumers, giving this false sense of that any of this could be happening in a humane way. We raise and kill about 10 billion land animals in the United States each year, countless other aquatic animals. There's been estimates of how many individuals they are, but since the fishing industry only counts them by the pound, we can only really make very best guess estimates, but it's in the trillions of aquatic animals are killed every year for food. These are massive amounts of animals, and keeping in mind that every single one of them is an individual who feels pain and fear, there's just no way that we can humanely do any of this. There isn't a humane way to do it. We've looked into, the most nice sounding places and then find out what's really behind the scenes. One of the cage-free farms we investigated in California, the owner was calling his cage-free facility Chicken Disneyland. He thought it was so great. And yeah, the birds were just in a factory farm shed, crammed wing to wing. The investigator reported the sounds of these chickens just calling out in distress because they can never find a moment to rest. They're constantly being jostled off of their perches. Anyone who knows about chickens, they have this very complicated pecking order where they, have a very, very advanced kind of chicken society. And when you have that many birds crammed together, they cannot possibly form that. And to have to get across the shed to get to the food and water, you're going through, so many other birds, and they get in fights. Cannibalism and pecking is just, off the charts. It just goes on and on.
I'm just going to go back for a second. I didn't know this about people from animal welfare organizations being on the board of, what's it called?
The Global Animal Partnership, GAP.
You just wonder what the motivation there is. Like, that people like fighting for their lives for animals and then they're lying to the world. It's incredible. With something like Global Animal Partnership, so then you find out, wow, and now there's people are on their board from places like the ASPCA. What do you do with that? Like, do you protest Whole Foods? What happens then?
Well, I mean, PETA was actually on the board of GAP, like way, way early on when it was founded. And a couple of other animal rights or animal welfare groups were too. I think we were the first ones who got pretty disillusioned. There were high hopes for it, that it might actually be able to cut out some of the worst abuses that are happening to farmed animals.
Right.
But we quickly realized that it was where it was headed and resigned. And a couple of other organizations like Farm Forward have also resigned and said why. And there's, like I said, a couple of organizations that have just stuck with them after scandal after scandal. I mean, the Plainville one is, so bad in itself, but there was another one before that was involving a pig factory farm. We just had one where not one, but two whistleblowers came forward about a GAP certified, and it was a double certification. They had a GAP certification and humane certified certification. Those labels and their inspections that they do did nothing to prevent these birds were, as the whistleblowers reported to us, having their heads ripped off at the slaughterhouse while they're still alive. They go through that machinery. They go through this automated machinery. They get put in these shackles by their, delicate back legs. They go down the slaughter line and they're supposed to be dragged through this electric bath that's supposed to stun them. If any part of that process isn't calibrated correctly, these birds go through the entire slaughter process alive, ultimately ending with the head ripper machine. How humans invented something like that, we got to ask ourselves. But they go through the head ripper machine. Wow. It's rough.
Humans invented it because it's faster and cheaper, right?
Yeah. I mean, if they're 9 billion chickens are slaughtered for food in the United States each year. That's a lot of birds. That's a lot of individuals. Yeah. That's more than like the entire human population of the planet, just in the United States, being slaughtered for food, these chickens. And I can't stress enough that each one of these birds is an individual. Like they have so much personality. They feel pain. They do not deserve any bit of what's happening to them. And for this company, like I said, not one but two certifications that were supposed to be monitoring this company completely dropped the ball, completely failed.
So when you do an investigation on a company like that that's double certified, do they ultimately end up losing their certification, or do the certifications lose their meaning, or both?
Sometimes both, sometimes neither. Or maybe they'll lose the certification for a short time and then, somehow convince them to get it back. We've kind of seen a bit of everything. It's a mix going on. So I think the lesson for anybody who, cares about animals and is still eating them is that don't trust the label. We've had just countless investigations into these labels, and you can see at PETA.org, we have the farmer focus whistleblower case that I was just describing. The whistleblower shared photos of these poor birds' bruised bodies. You can see the green mussel disease, which is a symptom of factory farming. So birds raised for food in the United States, they call them broilers, which is like a reference to like you'd put this chicken's body in the broiler of your oven. But these birds are called broilers because they've been raised to grow so quickly, so fast to reach slaughter weight. They're usually killed about 41 days of age. And these are birds that can live for many years happily when they're not, when they're actually being taken care of properly and not being bred and overfed to be just growing so heavy that their legs and bodies will literally just give out from under them. And as this industry has manipulated these birds more and more and made them more and more into just these cogs that can fit into the slaughter machine, like I mentioned, the slaughter line that goes down the line and rips them apart, they are bred for big breast muscles because that's what consumers want. That makes the most money for the company. But it ends up depriving that part of their body from blood flow. It's just this weird, biological thing. If you're breeding them to be so deformed, for lack of a better word, these poor birds, deformed bodies, overweight and just obese bodies that were bred to be turned into meat as quickly as possible. Get as much money as you can out of them as quickly as possible. They get this thing called green mussel disease. And this is like an industry problem that they're trying to solve. And you'd think, again, being sold under this nice label that they shouldn't have that. And the whistleblowers, reported that they had higher rates of that than industry standard. So again, something is not adding up here. What do these labels mean? They don't really mean much.
No, and the same way greenwashing, all those labels never really meant anything. And the newest are these meat companies that are putting on climate labels, right? Like this is climate friendly beef. Will you talk about that a little bit?
Some meat industry think tank probably paid somebody a lot of money to come up with that one because it sounds really nice, doesn't it? So, for instance, the beef industry already uses almost half of the world's agricultural land and only produces 3% of the calories. Just to put that into perspective, that's with the most efficient like factory farming and feedlots going on. They put out this stuff about grass fed. That also sounds like a very nice thing. Oh, they aren't going to put the cows onto feedlots. They're raised on grass their entire lives. That uses an incredible amount of land. The cows have to be raised for longer periods of time, and all the time they're putting out methane. Methane is a greenhouse gas. It's about 80 times more powerful than carbon. So the math just doesn't math here. It's just not sustainable.
No, it's not at all. And somehow these like ridiculous labels are just like people fall for them. And because they want to, mostly, I think.
Unfortunately, yes, it is. It kind of feeds into people kind of wanting to do the right thing. But then the industry kind of sneaks in like, yeah, we'll grab those people and we'll kind of keep them consuming the meat, dairy, and eggs.
Sure.
Whereas, otherwise they would have gone for the vegan eggs. There's vegan steak. There's like multiple companies making vegan steak now. What world do we live in? This is not something I could have imagined when I went vegetarian and vegan, when I was a teenager in high school, where I had to go to the specialty food store to get my soy milk. Like, Starbucks doesn't even charge extra for vegan milk now. And I can have not one, but like several different kinds of like vegan steak if I really wanted to.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
But yeah, like you said, these claims are they're absolutely bogus. And the USDA, unfortunately, has allowed those kind of to slip through. And there's not substantiation for it. But the industry, It just goes to show the lengths the industry has gone to fix its image problem. They had there was news articles about the last climate conferences, the COP27, et cetera, and how many meat industry lobbyists were there. They got scared for a second because there was so much more talk about animal agriculture and its impacts on climate. They pulled all the stops.
That's why they're coming out with these labels like climate friendly beef that people literally think, oh, okay, I'm not hurting the climate. It stuns me. So what are you working on now?
Actually have had some movement going on with that whistleblower case I mentioned. And we've also been doing nationwide vegan cheese giveaways. And we also have our ice cream truck, which we are touring around. It was just in New York. I think it's heading to Providence right now, giving away free vegan ice cream to kids.
That is bizarre.
Right?
Well, any attention, right? Any attention. But what about the vegan cheese? Where are you giving vegan cheese away?
We just launched this in Denver, and then it's popping up all across the country. We're giving away these vegan samples. And I'll just give a plug for anyone who wants to be more active. We are always looking for people in every city, every town who wants to join our action team. So we have a sign-up form on our website. It's called the Action Team. And we will send people if they want to do a vegan cheese giveaway in their communities. We've also been doing a lot of vegan egg sandwich giveaways, like breakfast sandwiches. And that's because we're in the middle still of a multi-year avian flu outbreak, which is, a big issue. Hundreds of millions of chickens and turkeys have been killed by this outbreak. It's kind of this silent crisis because it happened behind the scenes. It's often not reported about in the news, but it is still very, very much out there. There have been several dozen human infections so far. It is just a powder cake waiting to happen, with fall migrations coming of wild birds who, inadvertently end up, spreading that to these captive birds, these factory farm birds. And if one chicken on a factory farm gets avian flu, they are all mass killed. And, that is going to keep happening, unfortunately, while we are mass raising and killing animals for food. And that's for their flesh and for their eggs. So part of that is that we've been doing vegan egg giveaways as well. So anyone who wants to do a vegan egg or vegan cheese giveaway in their communities, get in touch. We are always looking for more people to get those boots on the ground in their communities to do that.
I love it. I love it, Amber. Well, thank you so much for today and for all that you do for animals.
Thank you.
To learn more about Amber and to sign up for the 30-day plant-powered challenge, go to our website, speciesunite.com. We will have links to everything. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Species Unite. If you have a spare moment and could do us a favor, please subscribe, rate, review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. It really helps people find the show. I would like to thank everyone at Species Unite, including Gary Knutson, Caitlin Pierce, Amy Jones, Paul Healy, Santina Polky-Link, Bethany Jones, Hannah Gabrielson, and Anna Kalner, who wrote and performed today's music. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day.